Hello, and welcome back to the 3D Studio Max tutorials. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to make objects using these settings over here on the right. But before we do that, I'd like to discuss some more of these options up here that I failed to mention in the last episode, and I feel like we really should go over. So the first one we're going to go over are snaps. So snaps are pretty simple in that once you have a snap selected, you can, when you move objects around, they'll snap to areas in the grid when you have a snap toggle selected. So you can see here, it's when I move it over, it's moving to specific areas. And if you go ahead and click and hold this, it changes how it snaps. And if you right click, you can change specific settings on what it snaps to, what snaps to begin with, and these are specific to different types of objects, and there are some other options you can go through. Let me just change this back to this. There's also angle snap, so if I go ahead and change this to angle, you can see that this is only moving in 5 degree increments. And once again, you can right click here and change that to something else. So say we want to make it like 10%. This is useful if you want to make sure something only, just for a variety of things, really. There's also percentage snap, which is for scale. So these will only scale in degrees of 10%. Yeah, 10%. And yeah. So there's also this option here, which is basically to make these things called selection sets. So if I select both these objects here, and I hit this little icon, a little menu will pop up, and I can go ahead and hit Create New Set. I'll just name this Test Set. And basically what this does is it, if I deselect these, I can go up to this little drop-down menu and hit Test Set, and then these objects that I put in that set will be selected. And you can add to and remove, there's a few different options here. So this is really useful for organization, especially if you have multiple of the same object. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this real quick. So right here, we're going to talk about the mirror tool. So if I go ahead and hit mirror, so right now, hold on, well, this isn't quite right. Let's go ahead and actually, this will work. So if I go ahead and hit mirror, and I go ahead and hit, that'll work. And so this will basically make a mirror of the object in question. So I go ahead and hit copy. You can see that there's another object there. And normally it's based off of, so this is the original object, the parent object, and this new one would be the copy. So if I click these other options, you can see it changes where it mirrors to, this being the x-axis, like over here, y being this way, as you can see there. These options are a bit different, where they'll not only will they mirror it in this case over the x, but also inverse the mirroring over the y. So kind of see it there. I didn't choose the best spot to do this, since this isn't in a good area, but that's okay. So those will move around, and this offset option will just be how far away you want it to be. So let's change this to 50. And then there's these options here. So copy just makes a simple copy. Instance does make a copy, but any sort of editing you do to the parent will be reflected in the copy. And you can do this through multiple copies. I'll show you how to do that in a second. And reference is sort of the same thing, except anything you make to the parent will be reflected here, but anything you do to the child will not be done to the parent, like it would be in instance. So that's a useful tool for multiple things. So another way to make a copy is to click on an object and then hold Shift, and then hold Shift and sorry, have this selected, and then hold shift, and then you can click and drag it out like this, and then another little menu will pop up. It'll have copy, instance, and reference just like the other one. But another thing you can do is you can add numbers of copies. So say I may add 5, and they will all be made out like that. So there's the align tool, which is relatively simple. If I just let me just move some of these around so they're not aligned anymore, as well as maybe not that way, as well as rotate some of them, and let's scale this one up. So if I go ahead and hit the align tool, select all the objects, then hit the align tool. A window should pop up. Oh, whoopsies. Hold on one second. So okay, yeah. So once you select all of them and you hit the align tool, you click on the parent or where you want them all to go. And right now it looks like kind of a mess, and that's because we have the align position set to X, Y, and Z, so they'll all be aligned on the same X, Y, and Z. If I go ahead and deselect X, you can see they're back in that line, but all these ones over here that were up or to along the other axes are now matched up. You can do the same with orientation. So if I hit X-axis, you can see this one rotates back on its axis, and you can do all this to make them lined up again. And then same thing with scale. If we hit these, those will also all align. Another thing we can do is these options here in these two boxes, current object and target object. What this does is it changes where, how they, like what they align to. So if we hit minimum to minimum, or basically just changes how they align to the center point on here. So yeah, you can just go ahead and apply for that. Then hit OK, and then we're good to go. Now we're just going to really quickly talk about some of the options here with making objects. So when you're making an object, you want to click over here, and then you want to click and drag. In this case for the box, you click and drag to make the base, and then when you let go, then you can move up and down with your mouse to make the Z height and the Z axis, and then click again, and then there you go. Simple as that, really. For some things like cones, you would make the base, the height, and one second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. So when you're doing a cone, you would make the base, the height, and then you would also do a third operation to make the point of the cone. So just like that. And this is true for all these. And if you click this drop-down menu, even if you go to extended primitives, which are more complicated objects, but they all have the same general idea of you click and drag once to make the general size and shape, and then multiple other clicks to for specific dimensions or characteristics of that. Another thing you can do is if we go and make a square here, you can over here you can change the height specifically. So let's make this. Whoops, my numpad was not on. 70 by 80 by 50, just to even that out. And we have segments. So this will basically determine how many segments there are in the on the plane. So I go ahead and hit enter with that. You can't really see it here, but they're there. It'll make more. It'll make more sense when we start editing the box, which I guess I can show you now. If I go ahead and hit right click and hit convert to editable poly, and we go to yeah, so you can kind of see all the different faces and we can adjust those. It might look a bit better if I didn't make so many. So let's just do that one more time. And let's make that like 2 by 2 by 2. Let's make this like 50 by 50 by... Ooh, not that much. There we go. And then we go and convert to editable poly, and then we go to faces, or edges maybe would be a bit easier to see. Oh yeah, so you can kind of see these. Normally, a little line shows up. If I hit F4, there we go, you can see it. So if you want to show, have the wireframe show up, just go ahead and hit F4. And you can see that now there's segments here, and you can interact with these as their editable poly. But we'll be going over that more in the next episode. So until then, bye-bye.